Every office has its types. The hardest worker is pulling 60-hour weeks, fixing everyone's mistakes, and burning out. Then there's the other guy, the guy who does nothing but reply, "Sounds good," to every email chain. When the layoffs come, the hard worker is out the door. The guy who does nothing survives to pick up another paycheck. Why? Because the modern corporate machine hides a brutal secret. Meritocracy is dead. Hard work is punished, not rewarded. Laziness is a calculated survival strategy. The lazy employer hasn't slipped through the cracks. They have hacked the HR system to make themselves completely unfireable. The truth is, corporate parasites live forever, while being the best at your job is the fastest way to destroy your career. Chapter 1: The Art of the Baseline. Inside the broken algorithm of corporate America, doing absolutely nothing will eventually get you dragged to the chopping block. That's why seeing truly useless employees get fired reinforces a myth that laziness never works. The truth is, you can excel at work from being lazy as long as you're clever about it. When it comes to the workplace, being lazy is just the art of having real clarity when it comes to priorities. A hard worker tries to match their output to what they believe the company they work for wants. Meanwhile, a lazy person, and more importantly a lazy person with staying power, will identify what a company needs and spend what little level of output they can maintain on that. It's known as the invisible baseline, or as you might refer to it in day-to-day life, the bare minimum. And no matter what the press releases or their ads will tell you, that is what companies actually want. Not excellence, but stability. This is true of employees on every rung of the corporate ladder, with some surveys showing that in 2026, an incredible 65% of workers ultimately chose job stability over career advancement. And could you blame anyone for that mentality? Most people are living paycheck to paycheck, just as most companies are operating on terrifyingly thin margins. That's what makes the invisible baseline so attractive to the lucky folks who end up in salaried positions. Rather than working at maximum potential at all times, you can reshift your priorities to high-visibility, low-yield work. In other words, looking like you're working hard when you're actually spending most of your time relaxing. Experts call this productivity theater, or performative work, where employees adopt tactics to basically fool their supervisors into making them seem like incredibly attentive workers. You might recognize some of the tactics for this kind of behavior popping up at your own workplace. If you've ever sat through a meeting, you've seen this person before. They never contribute to the actual work. But the second appearances matter, suddenly they're fully locked in. They'll be the one nodding along with a thoughtful expression, appearing to take notes, replying, or maybe even interjecting here and there. It's all designed to make the boss think that nobody is more invested in this work than them. If your workplace uses Microsoft Teams or Slack or any other centralized messaging and co-working software, there's a very good chance that the parasite is a power user there too. They're the one that's perpetually online, maybe because they use a mouse jiggler to hack the system. If you send a message, you can expect an almost immediate reply. After all, it's not like they're busy. But always being available through work services does create the illusion that they're working, even if they're not. Unless your supervisors are forking out for some high-grade bossware, they'll probably get away with that too. This is so rife that even the people running the communication companies can't ignore it. Christina Janzer, Senior VP of Research and Analytics at Slack, has said, "We see behaviors in our broader research where desk workers feel obligated to demonstrate when they're working rather than focusing on hitting their goals." And it makes sense. The former objective is easier than the latter, and as our investigations have discovered, sometimes even executing the latter won't get you the results you're hoping for. If you took an uneducated guess, you might think that the parasite here is the isolated bad apple that is spoiling the bunch by dragging down the collective average. And you would be wrong. It's actually the hard workers that are the anomalies bucking the trend of corporate mediocrity by overachieving. A study in 2023 found that 43% of workers in a 1,000-person study were using as much as 10 hours of their work week just to engage in productivity theater, rather than getting any actual work on the docket. And this has actually gotten worse over time. A similar study conducted in 2025 found that 66% of employees admitted to engaging in productivity theater in order to get one over on their bosses. They also asked employees who sincerely believed that their contributions were measured by clear outcome-based metrics, and only 23% replied in the affirmative. The fact that looking like you're working hard is a more pragmatic choice than actually working hard is one of the worst-kept secrets in corporate America. And it doesn't seem like anything is being done to correct the path at a systemic level. The lazy workers that survive are the ones who are able to develop a kind of sixth sense for what your supervisors seem to focus on the most. Rather than trying to strive for all-round excellence like your average overachievers, they'll intuitively stick exclusively to the zones of maximum impact, the places where their apparent contributions, even if they're little more than symbolic, will have maximum visual and psychological impact. While you are breaking your back making sure that something most people won't even notice is just right, the coworker putting in minimum effort looks like the office superhero. It would be bad enough if the workplace parasite was just skirting by with minimum effort, but the truth is even worse. Chapter 2: Weaponized Incompetence. The office slacker has been directly taking advantage of you already. They have such a subtle and insidious way of doing it that you might not have even noticed it was happening. If you're a woman with a mediocre boyfriend, you're probably already intimately familiar with the psychological tactic known as weaponized incompetence. If not, finding out the truth behind what so many of the worst people in your life have been doing to you is sure to make your blood boil. And that's because weaponized incompetence takes advantage of your best instinct to help fuel someone else's worst, your desire to get something done right and in time. Weaponized incompetence is doing something badly on purpose until it's delegated. People see this in their personal life all the time. The friend who never learned to drive, so they're always asking for a ride to places. The partner who acts like doing the dishes is as hard as diffusing an explosive, so you just take it off their hands to get it done. But it's become an increasingly large problem in the workplace, especially with the increasing development of tech in all of our lives. New hardware and systems give the workplace parasite plenty of plausible deniability to pretend different tasks are beyond their comprehension, especially when it comes to group projects. In these situations, they'll be attempting to leverage the pure and simple power of cringe to make you take the task off their hands. You'll give them a task that you think is completely idiot-proof, and yet they'll have questions. And then follow-up questions. You know it'd be unreasonable for you to be angry at a coworker who just seems to have good faith queries about the task that you've asked them to perform, but there comes a point when you have to realize doing the task for yourself will be faster than explaining in detail how to do the task. You think you've made life a little easier for yourself, and maybe you even feel a little bad that perhaps your coworker will think you were condescending to them. Little do you know, you just played directly into their hands. They might also skip this step and just go straight for the even more frustrating technique of strategic incompetence, or slow walking, where they'll just get your hopes up by actually attempting the task, but very much not in earnest. If not by doing it badly, they'll instead attempt to go at an absolute snail's pace until the deadline looms and you're just forced to relieve them. That's the power of weaponized incompetence, and it can be incredibly detrimental to workplace culture. Ask Brianna Perullo, clinical director and founder of On Par Therapy, who has researched the topic extensively. She said, quote, "When poor performance goes unchecked, it can demoralize those who take genuine pride in their work. It ultimately undermines productivity and can breed toxic workplace environments where many workers feel exploited. But it actually gets even more dangerous when the target of the weaponized incompetence isn't you, but instead the middle manager on the rung above you. That is where the real rot starts to set in for everyone but the parasite. Think from the perspective of a middle manager for a second and understand that in many ways it's a pretty thankless job. You don't have a lot of the actual power of the executives who are higher up, and your work performance is less dictated by the amount of effort you put in and entirely at the mercy of your employees beneath you on the chain. To put it simply, you can only control the workers under you up to a point, but if they don't deliver on the tasks set, well, that's on you. As a result, you're likely to see these middle managers take on a by any means necessary perspective. While a truly conscientious worker is process-oriented, a middle manager by design has to be results-oriented. If one employee is performing incompetently, it makes sense to reassign that work to an employee that has a proven track record of accomplishment. In the short term, this is the logical decision, but it's also the first falling domino of a far bigger and more dangerous problem. Work is like matter itself. It can't necessarily be created or destroyed, it can only change forms. The form it takes after being shirked off of a corporate parasite is the determining factor in an awful phenomenon known as performance punishment. To help you understand exactly how this works, we'll start with a term you're probably familiar with: quiet quitting. It's when an employee doesn't do anything to formally change the nature of their arrangement with their employer, but they mentally check out. Like a classic corporate parasite, they do what they need to do in order to get by and little else. With that in mind, another name for performance punishment is quiet promotion. This is where high-performing employees are given additional work and responsibilities without also being given the formal benefits of a promotion, like a shiny new title, additional company benefits, or a pay raise. And its negative impact on the exact kinds of high-performance employees that prop up these companies are stark. There is, of course, the ever-present specter of burnout from overwork, which can have serious physical and mental effects. We talked earlier about having corporate parasites weaponizing incompetence can destroy workplace cultural cohesion, but that gets even worse when the hardest workers are experiencing performance punishment. These overworked individuals are extremely likely to start resenting their other coworkers who can't pick up the slack. This in turn lowers morale and increases the chance that someone makes a mistake on an important project while under a huge amount of work stress. So the dominoes keep falling and everyone but the parasite suffers. This isn't even the system itself denying its programming. Currently, this is how it's supposed to work. And the cruelest part is, even if the high-effort worker did receive a token pay raise as a result of their performance punishment, that can still be a curse in disguise. With the hard worker now officially being more expensive than the parasite, they're more likely to get laid off if and when the company is considering scaling back. Chapter 3. The HR Meat Grinder. All of this probably has you wondering, though, why don't they just fire these people? And that's where we find another dark secret in all this. Due to the foibles of modern corporate structure and policy, it can sometimes actually be more expensive to fire a lazy employee than just keep him on the payroll. According to studies and interviews conducted by the Society for Human Resource Management, the total cost to hire a new employee can be between 50 to 200% of the position's salary. That means if you're hiring for a job that pays $60,000, you may spend $180,000 or more to fill that role. This is because the actual act of firing an employee simply for being willfully mediocre is a bureaucratic nightmare. It generally requires multiple performance improvement plans, not as part of the employee's legal rights, but as an internal corporate paper trail against potential lawsuits. There are also multiple meetings and procedural hoops to jump through, and if the case isn't watertight and the employee is vindictive about losing their job, it could even expose the employer to litigation. But the real costs come in when it comes to hiring this same employee's replacement. Ankit Shah, supervisor of talent development at Columbus State Community College in Ohio, says, "Meeting with potential candidates, screening applications, scheduling a few rounds of interviews, and making final decisions takes away time from accomplishing organizational goals and outcomes, which then certainly ties to ROI. Interviews, training, time when the position is empty, during which the hard workers will need to continue picking up the slack, and in the end, it's just better to let it ride and keep the problem. The path of least resistance." However, companies need to put on a brave face. The public excuse for letting all these problems fester is the importance of maintaining stability. Isn't that the top priority for a healthy company after all? Chapter 4. The Dead Sea Effect. Part of the reason why the math behind all this madness is so broken is that studies have found that, frankly, stability can be hugely overrated in the corporate space. In fact, what seems like comfort and safety of a stable workforce can actually be an illusion covering a slow death march to complete insolvency. A study found that even in the highly change-averse field of private equity investment, cycling staff can provide fresh perspectives that keep the staff light on their feet. Francesca Cornelli, dean of the Kellogg School of Management, said of the study, "Organizations are loath to change. They don't consider whether they need to update the skill set of their team or bring in new talent. They eventually do change their teams, but only when it is too late." And what exactly does it mean in this case for things to be too late? Bruce F. Webster, adjunct professor for the BYU Computer Science Department, calls the result the Dead Sea Effect. Much like the titular sea that can't support any life because of its toxic salt content, the experts and hard workers will burn out and be alienated by the toxic work environment. Little by little, they'll leave, like water evaporating from the Dead Sea's surface. Eventually, all that's left are the toxic employees, the work parasites. They're too inconvenient to fire, and they won't leave because they're much less likely to have work prospects elsewhere if they're not qualified. The high performers offset the toxicity of the parasites while they're still there, but when the stresses take their toll and they leave, you're left with an entirely toxic ocean, an ecosystem where nothing can grow and your company is effectively doomed to rot away from the inside. All of this comes back to one simple truth. You would have to be a moron to even try being one of the high performers. In the software engineering industry, only a fraction of companies are beautiful, fragrant flowers making paradigm-shifting technology that'll change the way we live our lives. Everyone else is just a single blade of grass working on app X or website Y or large language model Z, and the lawnmower comes for everyone eventually. And the issues here are systemic. They're baked into the dark math of how these companies operate. So even if a huge portion of the workers at a company make the individual decision to work hard and give 100% of their attention and effort, it wouldn't change a thing. The system exists in a way that benefits the parasites above all else. So it's time to ask yourself, are you working hard or working smart? Want even more reasons to despise corporate America? Now check out The American Dream is Dead, Millennials Are Obliterated, or watch this instead.